What is up, everybody? Bob here from Prospect Analytics, and today I'm going to do a little video on how to make money buying and selling Bowman baseball cards. Obviously, the sports card hobby is a huge industry, but there are a lot of people out there who don't buy and sell prospects. They see it as a form of gambling. You know, these guys might not make it to the MLB. There's no guarantees they're going to be a good player, which scares a lot of people away. But I'm here to tell you that none of those things actually matter. It's all about kind of capturing the hype of these prospects more than it is if they're going to be good MLB players. And there is a process for doing so. Now, over at the website, www.prospect-analytics.com, it's basically what my entire newsletter is based around. And if you want to go over there, you can now get a free 7-day trial for anybody who signs up for a premium subscription. It's $9.99 a month, $99.99 a year. And if you're looking to get into Bowman or you're already into Bowman, you just need a little bit more guidance, this is a great place to go because I bring you basically everything that I can to assist you on who to buy, whose market is down, you know, which players are trending in the right directions. We haven't seen a corresponding move in their market. It's all about kind of like capturing that hype before they get there. You know, a lot of people just kind of go to MLB.com, go to Baseball America, all these places, look at rankings and say, oh, I'm buying this guy, he's top 20. But you'll find that the card values don't actually go hand in hand with those rankings because there are things that drive the card prices outside of your usual prospect rankings that those outlets cannot account for. And that's why I make prospect rankings specifically for Bowman. They're tailored to Bowman and the tools and all of the things that players have that make their cards sell. So make sure you go over and check out the site. There's a lot of good information on there to help you. So I'll run through kind of a who, what, when, where, how, why type situation of, you know, how to get into buying Bowman baseball cards with the intention of reselling them and making money doing so. But we'll save the who for the end. I'm going to start with the what to buy. Now, kind of as a blanket statement, first Bowman autographs is the answer. Things have changed a little bit recently. For a while, Bowman didn't really do second autographs that much. There would be like a couple players who would get a second, you know, a non-first Chrome prospect autograph. You know, Topps has been kind of leaning into these more recently. You see guys like Kevin McGonigal, Connor Griffin, Eli Willits, Leo DeVries, they will start getting second, even third autographs. So it's not to say that you can't make money buying those, especially some of those guys, their first autographs might be so expensive that it makes more sense to go into a second autograph because as the player's stock increases, those do also go up as well. But for the most part, you want to be looking at first Bowman autographs. Now, the biggest thing here, if you're trying to resell to make money, is to stay away from in-person autographs. The way that you can tell those apart, if you're kind of new to this, is that the cards that come out of the pack will always say top certified autograph. The card will have a little white bubble at the bottom that the player signs in. Now, if you don't see either of those things, that means that somebody has taken a basic Chrome card and got it signed in person. This is a mistake that a lot of new collectors to Bowman make. And I know that in your head, it probably makes sense that a card the player took and, you know, hard signed in person should hold value, but it doesn't. And what you'll come to find as I kind of run through this video is that the trick to, you know, making money buying and selling Bowman is to have the biggest pool of buyers possible. You want the most liquid cards, the ones that are going to be the easiest to resell so that you don't get stuck with them. And the fact of the matter is that the big group of Bowman people who are buying these cards will avoid in-person autographs at all costs. So unless you're collecting them for your personal collection, if you want to take a card, get it signed, it's a player or a team that you like, there's no, you know, issue with holding in-person autographs. But when we're talking about cards that you are trying to resell, that is like rule number one, stay away from those because the Bowman people will not buy them. And when it comes to the colors, it gets kind of confusing because Bowman is just all over the place now. I think there was 37 different variations in 2026 Bowman on the last video that I did. But for the most part, you are going to want to stick to the true colors. If you're trying to resell, that means no waves, no shimmers, no lavas. Now, I will say, any card is a good buy if you get a good price on it. So I'm not saying don't buy an Aqua Lava. If you get a good price on Aqua Lava, there's nothing wrong with an Aqua Lava. But when I search for cards, and I'm looking in particular for cards that I plan on reselling later, I buy the parallels that I know are the easiest to move, the parallels that most Bowman people will want, and those are almost always true colors. Now, I'm a sucker for a gold shimmer myself. I have quite a few gold shimmers because they're just so cool. But even then, that's going to be much harder to move later down the road than if you had a true gold. The most liquid parallels, the ones that I find are the easiest to resell. You got your refractor out of $4.99, your true blue out of $150, and your true gold out of $50. Now, of course, the true orange out of $25, true red out of $5, super fractor 101. If you get up into the higher end stuff, that is also the way to go. You know, those are kind of the full run of what the Bowman people consider the true colors. And oranges and reds and super fractors, you can move those. You can make money on those just as well. But I personally like to dabble in sort of the three that I have listed here, only because my strategy is finding, as I said, the biggest pool of buyers. The fact of the matter is that if you buy a player who's a $20 base autograph guy and his stock goes crazy up to 100, that's great. If you're holding an orange or red, you're going to find someone to take that card that's now up $1,000 or whatever it's up. But also the people who are willing to pay that much money for a card is smaller. I would almost rather, grab a couple refractors, a couple blues, or a couple golds, something like that, because I find that they are easier to move just because it's a lower price point. You have more people who are willing to pay that. But again, you can't go wrong with orange, red, superfractor. Those are like the top of the line. But as far as the most liquid, the easiest ones to turn around and flip if you're making money, I go refractor, I go true blue, and I go true gold. Now, as I said, if you get a good deal on something, nothing is a bad buy. I have a bunch of speckle out of $2.99. If you're getting those at the same price as refractor out of $4.99, I have no problem with the speckle. Those are pretty easy to move. Honestly, the sparkle out of 71, the old black out of 75. There are certain colors that people do like, but it's just really tough when you get into your greens, your yellows, your purples. They're just not cards that are as easy to move. So like I said, if you get a good deal, no problem with any of those colors. All of them can go up. But if you're looking for the ones that are the easiest to turn around and sell, I'd stick with those true colors and those liquid parallels. Now that we're buying first autographs that are not in-person autographs and we're going after these true colors and kind of these liquid parallels, the next question is, should you buy raw versus graded? I don't think that there's really a correct answer here. Now, PSA 10 is the king. That is always the gold standard for ultra-modern Bowman cards if you're looking to buy and resell them. Personally, I would stay away from PSA 9s. Now, I will put a disclaimer here. The exception to that is if the card has a short print run. Once you get up into, I would say, gold and higher, so we're talking about a serial number of 50 or less, you're buying the rarity of that card more than you're buying the condition of that card, if that makes sense. If you want to buy a red and there's no PSA 10s, you have to buy a 9. Sometimes you have to buy an 8. I have no issue when you get up into the reds, the orange, even the gold, like a true gold PSA 9. I have a couple of those. If it's a player you believe will go up, you take what you can get. But when you get down into like the purples, refractors, base auto, stuff like that, there's so many copies that really what sets them apart from each other is the condition. The condition matters more to me the more copies there are. And when it comes to those cards, it kind of reminds me of that Family Guy clip. It's like a PSA 9 is a PSA 9, but a raw card, that could be anything. It could even be a PSA 9. That is kind of how the hobby looks at cards. Everybody out there thinks that they can gem a raw card. They don't want a PSA 9. Even if that card is in near mint condition, it might be an 8. They think when they see a raw card, if they think they can make it a 10, they are going to buy that over the PSA 9 almost all of the time, unless, like I said, you're up into that really expensive, very rare stuff where there's only a couple of copies of it, then it matters less. When you're out here buying your true blues, buying your refractors, I typically would stay away from PSA 9s because, as I said, you're looking for the biggest buyer pool when you turn around to resell those, and PSA 9s are just historically harder to sell. Now, you can also hold them raw. I have no problem with holding raw cards. Raw cards go up just as easily as graded cards do. Now, one strategy you might have is buying during the off season, kind of review the cards yourself, see if any of them are worth sending in for grading. But the one note that I will give on grading is that when it comes to prospects specifically, I wouldn't grade any cards during the season. I know a lot of people do, and they have success, but this is just a me personally thing. It's an extremely volatile market. These prospects go up 100% and then drop back down. I mean, sometimes you have like a week or two. Some no-name prospect in single A has a 3 home run game. His card price shoots up 100% overnight. That hype only lasts so long. If you want to sell those cards, it's like you have like a couple days sometimes on some of these guys. The windows are very small. For that reason, there is nothing worse than sending off a card during the season to get graded. That player's stock pops. You want to cash in. You want to take your profits. You don't have that card in your hand because PSA is a nightmare and they've had it for 3 months. It's just not a risk I would ever take. If you're going to grade raw cards, do it in the off season. Submit them in November, December. Give yourself time so that by the time March, April rolls around and that minor league season comes back, you have those cards back in hand. Because as I said, these windows are really small. I've bought in cards before from prospects, and when they came in the mail, by the time it arrived to me, I had already resold it. I just opened it, checked the condition, made sure everything was right, closed it back up, put a label on it, out the door. That's kind of how you have to look at some of these prospects. You have these small windows. I don't know that I would ever risk grading something during the season. So I would look for PSA 10s. I would try to avoid PSA 9s unless it's in a short printed variation, something that's a little bit more rare and hard to find. But I would go for PSA 10 and raw. I think you can go fine with either of those when it comes to Bowman. I will avoid other slabs that aren't PSA. I know this is a controversial statement probably because PSA has been getting crushed publicly lately. They shut down the value submission tier. Their backlog is now over 10 million cards. People are waiting months for their cards. And maybe there will be a day where BGS kind of comes back like it used to, or people start shifting towards SGC. But as of right now, the best chance that you have to maximize your returns on Bowman cards is in PSA. There's not a question about it. Anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong. If you put a ultra modern Bowman card in an SGC slab and it gets a 9.5, it's worth as much as a raw card. So now you've paid for grading, you've still waited for it to get back, and now your profit margins are lower because it's the same value as if you had just done nothing and held on to it raw. Even SGC 10s are very inconsistent the way that they multiply when it comes to Bowman. BGS is the same thing. A lot of times if you knew your card would 9 but thought it couldn't 10, and that 9.5 was kind of like a middle ground between a PSA 9 and PSA 10, it's not like that anymore. You see BGS 9.5s in ultra modern Bowman sell for the same price as PSA 9s now. So is it possible that, as this goes on and people start kind of shifting away from PSA, is it possible that we see, BGS and SGC kind of get a little bit more of a market share in Bowman? Yes, it's possible. But for me, I would never buy or sell unless it was an extremely good deal. I think I maybe have 2 or 3 SGC 9.5s in my possession of Bowman cards. Unless it's an extremely good deal that I can't pass up, I will stay away from them, because you will learn when you go to resell those cards to Bowman people that it is a nightmare trying to negotiate the prices on these BGS and SGC slabs. Now, where to buy these cards? There's not really a right answer. Wherever you can get the best deals. Again, if you're trying to resell these, the lower the entry point, the better when you go to resell it. I think eBay still reigns supreme. A lot of people have issues with the fees, but you can't really beat the amount of eyeballs that your cards get on eBay. And so eBay is always the first place that I go. I will say that ComC, especially for low-end cards, is a great place to go. Sometimes when I get into these prospects that, I'm in my top 200, some of these guys down at the bottom have $3, $4, $5 base autographs. If you go to eBay, you have to pay taxes. Often you have to pay shipping. Sometimes I'll go to ComC and I'll find these guys with these cheaper base autographs and I'll just buy all of them. On ComC, you don't have to touch these cards. They don't have to be shipped to you. You can buy them, just hold them in your inventory. And then when that guy's stock pops, a couple weeks down the road and now they're doing double, you just relist them for double and they sell. You don't even have to put your hands on them. So ComC is really nice for some of these quicker flips, not having to pay, the shipping, not having to put your hands on the cards, repackage them back up, ship them back out is worth it a lot of the time. So I always will look after I go buy some cards on eBay. I will go to ComC, kind of for like the cheaper end stuff and see if I can kind of corner the market on some of these players. After that, you have your social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Obviously, make sure your money is protected. There are a lot of bad people out on the internet. If it's not somebody you know personally, do your due diligence. Make sure that they are not a scammer. But all those social media places are a good place to look if you're buying. Facebook especially, there's a lot of good Bowman Chrome Facebook groups with a lot of really trustworthy people in those. So I would go to Facebook first out of all of those places. And then of course you have your in-person buying, you have your hobby shops, you have your card shows. If you want to go through those value bins at card shows, I know a lot of people who clean up in that dollar section finding cards that are, $6, $7, $8 that are just drastically underpriced because dealers don't have time to sort through those boxes and price everything. So you can find some good deals at card shows. Hobby shops sometimes are a little sharper. It depends on where your shop is. I can tell you that mine doesn't often have deals because they know what they're doing, but some shops you can find deals on for sure. As I said, I don't think there's really a right or wrong answer here. You can kind of buy wherever you want, wherever you are getting the best deals, so long as you are sure that your money is protected. Now, when do you buy these cards? That's kind of tricky. Basically, whenever a player's price is lower than it should be, right? If you're looking at a guy and my rankings have these built-in buy ratings and expected target prices. If my formula says that a player's base autograph should be worth $50 and it's selling for $25, that 100% discrepancy there, that's a signal to buy. But for the most part, as kind of a blanket statement, the easiest time to buy is the off season. That's true for most sports. The attention to these cards kind of falls off when they're not playing games. It's not a bad idea to, kind of unload your stock of what you have in August and then kind of hold that cash, wait for October, November, December when people are not really talking about baseball. It's much easier to snipe auctions, buy some cards for cheaper, and then, kind of hold on to them as baseball season ramps back up. But there's also really good opportunities to buy during the season. Players kind of take off. There's been a handful of examples this year of guys who are up 200, 300% since the start of the year because their stock just starts going through the roof. That is a little bit trickier. I would say, if you subscribe to this site, follow my articles. I do a hot sheet every week of both hitters and pitchers for prospects that are not only playing extremely well, but also what corresponding changes we've seen to their card price. And you'd be amazed how many times, some guys have one good week, their card price doubles. There are guys who make 5, 6, 7 consecutive hot sheets. They're playing out of their mind and the card market doesn't adjust. Their card price doesn't move. Those are kind of those buying opportunities that you're looking for. So I would say, go check out the site, check out those hot sheets and, I try to give out everything that I can during the season to help you stay ahead. But I would say the easiest time, if you're not a subscriber, in the off season, once there's not baseball games being played, you typically see a dip in the prices, and that's probably the best time to kind of create a stash for the next year. Now, this, of course, is the hardest question. It's the question that I get asked the most, and unfortunately, it doesn't really have a concrete answer, and that's when to sell. Now, that depends on how much risk you are comfortable with. I'll give you a personal example. For me, Roman Anthony was a player that I was buying refractor autos of at $90 when 2023 Bowman was released. His popularity took off. I sold my refractor autos for $275 raw. I think I had a couple PSA 10s. They were like $600, and I was like, man, I've more than tripled my money. This would be crazy not to cash out. Well, that refractor auto that I sold for $275 raw ends up being an $1,000 card. Did I sell too soon? I mean, the answer really depends on how you view risk. I took my profits. I put it into other cards that go up. I think that I sold at the perfect time. I don't really have any regrets. Cards can go down just as fast, if not faster, than they go up. If Roman Anthony had debuted, batted under 200 for a couple of months, the value of that card would have fallen off a cliff. It's not a risk I'll ever take. Everything kind of changes on a case-by-case basis. But as soon as I've like doubled, tripled my money on a lot of these guys, because it is such a volatile market, I have no problem cashing out and taking my money. Second bullet point here, you usually want out before a player makes his MLB debut. Now, there are exceptions to that. For the most part, if it is a big name prospect, there's hype around him, he gets called up, those prices start coming up, I will always, always, always take my money. You have your rare cases. Ellie De La Cruz, Nick Kurtz was another one recently where they get called up, and from day one, they just get this hype. They're making highlight reel plays. Their cards go through the roof. But you have to understand that's more like a 1 in 100 scenario. I can remember Julio Rodriguez getting called up when I was first getting big into Bowman. Now he gets called up. He struggles for like a month or two. His card price falls off a cliff. He then gets hot. And I think he went 2020 or 25-25, rookie of the year, all this stuff. He did everything that you could possibly expect for a guy in his rookie year. Do you know what his Bowman autograph sold for at the end of the season? Less than it did the day that he was called up. You can't bank on these guys coming out of the gates on fire. It's a very big jump from the minors to the major leagues. And you have to understand that for most of them, they will never be more hyped than the day they were when they got called up. So in my opinion, it's not even worth risking. I sell, I get out. Now, the exceptions to that would be a very under the radar prospect. Jesus Rodriguez was one for the Giants this year that I said, he's $10 base autograph. He gets called up for the Giants. His card's still $10. But I said, as I've been saying about him for years, I think that this bat will translate to the MLB. He might not be super exciting, but if he comes up and he bats 300 for a week, this card, people will be like, wow, who is this guy? And that's what happened. He got called up, and I think he started, his first week, he hit a couple home runs, was batting 300. That $10 base autograph went up $40-$50. That's the only time I'd sell, is if it's someone who's not a big name or a pitcher. Pitchers are really the gamble. You see pitchers get called up and they have one really good start, their card prices go up 1,000%. We saw it with Jacob Mizorowski. We've seen it with a couple guys over the last couple years. And a part of that has to do with the fact that pitchers aren't followed as closely by most card people. So when they do get to the MLB and then they make one good start, everyone's like, wow, who is this guy? Whereas the hitters are more names, names that you are familiar with. So people have been following them for the last couple years. They don't really sneak up on you as much as pitchers do. So pitchers you can also sell at the call up, but they're kind of fun to hold just because all it takes is that one day that they make their MLB debut that they're on, and you can just see exponential gains. So I would say pitchers are fun to hold into their MLB debut. Hitters who aren't big names that no one really talks about are fun to hold. But if you're a top 100 prospect and you get called up, I'm exiting almost immediately, and I would advise most people to do so as well. And as I said, these cards go down faster than they go up, so it's better to sell too early than too late. You don't want to get caught holding the bag, and if you ever get to the point where you've doubled your money and you're like, oh man, I don't know, this guy could go up a little bit more, or should I take my money? The way that I always live my Bowman life by is that you'll never go broke taking a profit. Take that money, put it into something else that'll go up. Most of the time selling early, you will be on the right side of history. Now we've gone through the what to buy, those first Bowman autographs, those true colors, those liquid parallels. We know where you can find those cards. We know when the best time to buy and sell is, if you should buy raw or graded. Now the biggest question, and the only question that really matters when it comes to making money, is who you should buy. And of course, shameless plug, I got to say, you just subscribe to Prospect Analytics. Now, the whole reason that I've started this website, that I've started doing what I do, is because I have made prospect rankings that are specifically formulated for Bowman, and it was something that just didn't exist when I got into Bowman. I would be like, hey, why is this guy's card selling for this when this one's selling for this, and he's ranked higher by MLB, and everyone's just like, oh, I don't know, that's just the way it is. And I was like, no, not good enough for me. So I've spent the years kind of making this, there's things that just matter to card people. Are you young? Are you exciting? Do you have power? Do you have speed? What team do you play for? What position do you play? There are so many things that, MLB Pipeline and Baseball America are not taking into account when they do their prospect rankings. So cards is not as easy as going to those outlets and being like, oh, this guy's top 10 by Baseball America. In theory, it sounds like it means something. It doesn't mean something. There are players that are outside of the top 100 on MLB Pipeline and Baseball America that are outselling players inside their top 10. There's very little correlation between being ranked by a major prospect outlet and if your cards are going to be collectible or not. There's too many other factors at play. And I've basically dedicated my life over the last couple of years to figuring out what exactly drives the hype in the card market and trying to make a formula to the best of my ability to rank players based on how their Bowman autographs should be selling. And luckily, doing this for years and have a year's worth of data, I've also been able to figure out, based on a number of statistics and tools and all those other things that I talked about, what your price should be. So now, along with my rankings, I have target prices. I can tell you what a player should be selling for based on the way that they're performing, which will also help us give a buy rating. I give buy ratings 2 through 5 on, here's a player's ranking, here's his price, here's the team he plays for, here's his age, all this information. Would I sell him? Would I hold him? Would I buy him? All of that is available on the site, and it's just a really good tool to use. And since I updated my top 200 hitters this morning, I'll give you a little overview of what that top of the list kind of looks like. Now, of course, I can't give you my custom target prices and my buy ratings because those are for the premium subscribers only. But again, like I said, you want a 7-day free trial, go over to the site, prospect-analytics.com. Both of the monthly and annual memberships now come with a free 7-day trial. If you cancel in the first 7 days, your card will not be charged. So, there's kind of no risk if you want to go over and check it out. But here are my top 10 hitters as of today. Jesus Medei, number 1. Leo DeVries, number 2. Eli Willits, number 3. Rainiel Rodriguez, number 4. Edward Florentino, number 5. Luis Pena, number 6. Theo Gillen, number 7. Eric Hartman, making his way into the top 10 on today's update at number 8, Alfredo Duno, number 9, and Caleb Boniber, number 10. Now, you see those prices. These are all pretty expensive guys. That's not a mistake. You might go on MLB Pipeline and be like, well, why is, Alfredo Duno's base autograph almost $100 when he's ranked here? It's, as I said, those rankings, you can't really use them when it comes to card value. But if you come over and check out the site, I can give you a little bit more explanation into what it is that drives these prices and how these guys get ranked as high as they do, why their prices go up they do. And also, I have a Discord. If you go to the website, there's no charge for the Discord. Go to the website, there's a little Discord button right in the middle. We have a channel where we just talk prospects all day long. You can ask individual player questions. We have just a general chat where we share updates, statistics, prospect highlights. It's a great time. So you can hop in the Discord, talk prospects with us. A lot of fun Bowman names there in the top 10, all of them under the age of 21. We love these young teenage type prospects in Bowman. They really are the ones that tend to drive the market up the most when they have good season. Eric Hartman was not in my top 100 when the season started, but when you're 19, will just turn 20 years old, and you come into high A and all of a sudden you were a guy with double plus speed and now you're mashing home runs, that is the stuff that makes your card go through the roof. Now, taking a look at my number 11 through 20 non-debut hitting prospects as of this morning, we had Josue de Paula, number 11, Franklin Arias, number 12, Ralphie Velasquez of the Guardians, number 13, Devin Fitzgerald, another huge riser along with Eric Hartman, has now made his way into my top 15 hitters. Walker Jenkins at 15, Eduardo Quintero at 16, George Lombard Jr. at 17, Max Clark at 18, Ethan Salas, another one who's just a resurgence this season, seen his stock go way back up at number 19, and then Mike Sirota, one of my favorites, at number 20. Not to give away any secrets, but you saw the top 10. A lot of those guys were expensive, as they should be. Now we're looking at the 11 through 20. You can see kind of these prices. I mean, Devin Fitzgerald, $37, and he's ranked among a bunch of guys who are 100 and up. Eduardo Quintero down to $56. Also ranked near guys that are over $100. This is kind of where those target prices and buy ratings come into play. If you go over to the site, I will tell you, Devin Fitzgerald might be selling at $37, but it's because, he hasn't gotten the kind of public attention that he should. Maybe when MLB.com or Baseball America updates their list, they shoot him into the top 20. Then people are like, wow, this is a guy. Then they go start buying. Next thing you know, his base autograph's $100. So all of what we do is kind of trying to catch the hype before it happens. And there's a ton of good information. As I said, the prospect rankings update weekly, the buy ratings update weekly. There is a hot sheet every week, everything that I can do to help you gain a competitive advantage in the world of Bowman. So again, make sure you go over to www.prospect-analytics.com, lock in that 7-day free trial, check out the prospect rankings that I put out this morning. We also do a daily email blast. We call it the Bowman Brew. You will get the leaderboard, top 10 hitters, top 10 pitchers, StatCast data, a home run tracker of every prospect with a Bowman autograph who hit a home run the day prior. 8 a.m. every morning, those go out. Stop looking through the box scores. I'm going to give you this information. I'm going to tell you how these prospects are playing so that you can get ahead in the market. So again, go over to www.prospect-analytics.com so you can join the over 2,000 plus subscribers who are doing Bowman better. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you next time.